I'm David Hunt, and welcome to The Art Hunter. My guest today, with 40 years in the entertainment industry, hold on a minute, she only told me last week she turned 35 a week ago. Something's a bit strange here. Anyway, let's keep rolling. Including television and radio production, film publicity, which we'll talk about that, marketing, TV producer on the Don Lane Show. Whoa, Don Lane Show. And then, and this is where I met her, on Steve Vizard's show. She was a publicist with Dainty, working with some major people, including, Michael Jackson, David Bowie, Rolling Stones, Neil Diamond, Tony Bennett, Jerry Seinfeld, just to name a few. She's met them all. I actually had to bow when she walked into the room. We had to throw rose petals when, boring. Anyway, since running her own PR company, worked with Prince Edward, Elton John, Olivia Newton-John, and the list goes on. Victorian of the Year announcement, she does that every year. And 13 years with Melbourne Recital Centre, working with all the very, very important classical music people and other people nowadays. It is my absolute pleasure to welcome an old friend, dear friend, Di Rolle. Hello.
Hello, David.
What a wonderful life you've had.
Oh, I've had an extraordinary life.
Yeah.
I've met everybody.
You've met...
I've met everyone that I've ever wanted to meet my entire life except for Bob Dylan. I've never met Bob.
Oh.
But I was told not to meet him because I'd be disappointed because he would just grunt at me.
Yeah.
Which I wouldn't mind. I don't care.
Yeah.
But, I've met them all.
Right. So where did it all start from? Getting involved in this world, in the, TV and radio. Where did it all start?
Well, I always wanted to... I was fascinated by TV since TV was invented. And I would sit there and ask my father and mother questions like, how does Graham Kennedy get his clothes? Who dresses him? And my father was a bank manager and my mum was a housewife. She was fabulous though, she was a great influence on me. But I just always was fascinated with fame, really fascinated with famous people.
Oh, okay.
And that's all I wanted to do. My father wanted me to work in the bank. And they sent me to a domestic school, Box Hill Girls Tech, where I learnt to make men's shirts and mashed potato.
Can you make good mashed potato? That's an art form in itself.
Now, that is an art form, because to make it really whippy and fluffy, you have to go outside in the cold air and whip them. And I actually learnt that from my mother.
Oh, okay.
So there you go.
Your mother was a bit of an influence.
My mother was a very strong influence on me.
Right, why?
She loved showbiz too. She knew everything. She knew all the stars, she knew all the actresses, and I loved it when movies would come on and she'd know, oh, that's Katharine Hepburn and she's playing Jo March, which is my pseudonym now. I use it as a pseudonym. When I went on to go on tour and you have to have a pseudonym, my pseudonym's Jo March. But I'll probably have to change it now. But she was great. She knew everyone. She loved Frank Sinatra. She loved Tony Bennett. She took me to see Rudolph when I was very young.
Whoa.
And he leapt from one side of the St Kilda Palais to the other, and I went, that's my tribe. I want to be in his tribe.
Yeah. So, okay, that's what you wanted to do, but it's a hard business, and back then it would have even been harder, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it was impossible because I was steered towards going to work in the bank, and I didn't want to do it, but I failed at maths, so they wouldn't accept me, which I was thrilled about. My father was horrified. But I saw Channel O was being built, and I really encourage people, and certainly students, when I do lectures sometimes at the university, always write, always put, it's Napoleon said it's always your first move, and it is. I've always pushed myself forward, and when I saw Channel O was being built and the bricks were being laid, I wrote to Channel O. I just wrote, Dear Channel O, I went to Box Hill Girls Tech, I want to work in television. And one night my father answered the phone, hello, he was very conservative. And he said, oh, just a moment. And he said, there's a Paul Britnell on the phone for you, Di, from Channel O. And I went, yes. And he asked me if I'd like to come for an interview. And I went for an interview. And I got the job in the film library filing 16mm commercials.
Right. Now, Channel O these days is what?
Channel 10.
Channel 10,
yeah.
right. And it was out...
in Nunawading.
Yeah.
And it was the beginning of television. So I was very fortunate. I got in there right in the beginning.
And it was also where they filmed Neighbours. A lot of
later on.
Later on.
Yeah.
And Prisoner
was
also filmed from out there as well. And Back and Beyond, you know, like...
Oh, it was way out in the sticks.
Yeah.
My parents were horrified because I was stepping right out of the box, but I didn't care.
Yeah.
And the further I could step out of the box, the better.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to go for it.
Yeah.
So I always did. And I wanted to be a DA, and I became a director's assistant. And I fought for equal pay for the women, you know, way back then. And way back then, we were fighting away. But my mother was very jealous of me.
Oh.
In retrospect.
Yeah.
And she challenged me a lot.
Okay.
And I wish I knew now. I wish I knew then what I know now. She was quite narcissistic and very jealous of me, and I would have been able to manage her better and not take it so personally. So what she actually created was this young girl who was just going to prove her wrong. Because Mum came from that time where you'll never amount to anything, you'll never get yourself a man, you know, all that sort of stuff. Yeah. And I just thought, watch out, honey, I'm going to prove you wrong. And I did. And I remember when I met Nelson Mandela, I worked with him when he came to Australia, and he made me cry just standing there with him. You know how a lot of those people are so powerful. And I remember looking at the policeman that was standing beside me. We both had tears running down our eyes, and I thought, Nelson Mandela was so powerful. And I rang my mother and I said, well, Mum, do you think I've made it now? I just worked with Nelson Mandela. Now, Di Rolle today would not have done that.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, I was really sort of sticking it up her in a way.
Yeah.
But I was very fortunate. Like, she did influence me about showbiz as far as great singers were concerned. And she knew football like no one else I know. She always raved about Thor Merritt being the greatest footballer she'd ever seen, and Ben Cousins being the greatest footballer she'd ever seen, because she only passed away about 7 or 8 years ago. But she still loved her love of football. She loved Buddy Franklin.
Yeah.
And even when she was sort of dying at one time, she said, oh, I can't die yet. I've got to see Buddy Franklin play another season. And the doctor was like, what about your children? She said, oh, and them too. She was quite sort of mercenary, my mother, but I love her for it, and I forgive her for it. But I was very fortunate that, she played Tony Bennett all the time, and I got to work with Tony Bennett.
Yeah. And, well, you know, like, he's just passed.
And he's just passed away.
And, you know, like, and that's why I threw that one in, you know, because there were so many names I could have used, but I thought I had to throw Tony Bennett in.
Tony Bennett.
So all of a sudden, you know, like, you were, you know, like, had a fairly small... Don Lane, what? Yes. How did you get involved there?
I rang up... well, I actually met Don at the Logies. Don Lane.
Oh, Don.
I met Don Lane at the Logies one year, and he thought I was fabulous, and he asked me out, as you did in those days. And I said no. But David Evans, who was the manager of Channel 9 at the time, rang me at Channel O. And I can remember exactly where I was, and he offered me a job on the Don Lane show, and I wanted to work with Peter Feynman.
Right, but why? Why, Di? Why did they ask you?
Because I was a DA.
Yeah.
And I was... You know, I was a hot shot.
Right, okay.
You know,
I'm asking the question, and the audience want to know.
Yeah, so I was a girl that was ambitious, and it got around. You know, it got around.
And you know, like, and that show had every big celebrity that came to Australia.
It was fantastic.
They were on the Don Lane show,
it was wonderful. And it used to rate 33s and 34s.
Yep.
I mean, it was massive, and Don was fabulous. Until he wasn't.
Well, I'm sure he wasn't. Oh.
Yeah, he had his moments, you know, but he was a boy from the Bronx. And then when I went to New York and I went to the Bronx, everyone spoke like Don Lane.
So how did he get that role? You know, like, because it was you know, like Graham Kennedy before?
Yeah, it was, and it was sort of like Johnny O'Keefe and all those people. But Don was very charismatic. But Don came out to do a show at a nightclub. And Peter Feynman saw him. Peter Feynman could see that he had potential.
Right.
I mean, Don was very talented, but he had the most funny nature, and he could switch from being so charming to really not charming in 2 seconds.
And of course, Bert Newton was part of that show as well.
Yeah. But I was learning all the time. Like, I was learning about how to handle and manage all these different people and all these different personalities. Because, I mean, I went on to work with all those actors and singers, and they're all from another planet, you know. But I loved them all. Loved them.
Although, you know, like if you told them off, they would accept it. You know, like, and they go,
exactly.
"Oh, hold on, I am being a little bit precious."
Yeah, I did stand up to Don a lot, which was great because I had a very strict father, and I would never stand up to my father. Oh my God, that would have been like I would have been sent to Coventry. And he was a bank manager as well. So working with Don, I learned to stand up for myself. And Peter Feynman used to say, "Di, you've got to grow balls." Well, I did. You did. And I have.
But then you moved, you know, because you moved around a bit, didn't you?
Yeah, I did. I went from...
go on.
Alan Finney from Roadshow offered me a job when I was on the Don Lane show to go and work in the advertising department at Village Theatres. So I went, and that was fabulous because Village Theatres, they were the #1 A-team advertising department in, I think, the world, because we worked with Village Theatres and we worked with Warner Brothers and we worked with Graham Burke, who was just a genius at Village, and I learned a lot about marketing of films, and I worked on Mad Max with Mel Gibson, and just doing PR and marketing and learning marketing from the best, from like Alan Finney. He was one of my mentors, definitely.
Yeah, and a good friend.
And a great friend.
And the family.
And his children are my godchildren. And his wife was my best friend.
Fantastic.
And, so...
But then, all of a sudden, you went over to Dainty's, who's one of the biggest touring companies here in Australia.
Yes, I did. Paul took me to Francois and asked me if I would come and join his group. And that was like going to university, because you're working with a huge promoter, one of the best promoters in Australia. And he sent me on tour, and I'd never been on tour on the road. Oh, I'd been on the road with one-on-one actors and so forth, but I went on the road with Johnny Cash.
Whoa.
And if you're going to have a teacher in the world, you need someone like Johnny Cash. He was extraordinary. He was larger than life, had a voice like God. And I just loved being around him and in his presence. And he would sit down in front of the fire. I remember nights in Canberra at the old Hyatt Hotel, and we'd sit in front of the fire. He didn't drink or take drugs because he was an alcoholic and a drug addict, and they don't drink, but he would read the Bible while we were sitting in the front of the fire. And then he'd talk about Elvis Presley, because Elvis was going out with his wife before John started going out with him.
And they were part of Sun Records together too, weren't they?
Yeah, they were. They went back, and he spoke about Elvis very fondly.
But Michael Jackson, there is a fantastic story that you tell about Michael Jackson. Tell our viewers.
About being mistaken for his wife. Yes, I actually loved Michael. There was two Michaels. There was this impossible, like, 18-year-old who loved shaking Coca-Cola cans, and all the Coke would spray everywhere, and he thought it was hilarious. And then there was this fabulous 38-year-old man who was just divine and beautiful and talented and a genius. And when you looked into his eyes, he was 1,000 years old. But yes, I have to say that when we were in Sydney, Paul Dainty arranged for an after drinks, and there were people there that you know and I know, Anne Haybick and Angela Bishop, and he roped off this red chairs, and we didn't quite know what was going on. But then there were rumours that Debbie Rowe was arriving, and Debbie was the mother of his children. And anyway, she arrived, and she was upstairs. And Brian Walsh, darling Brian Walsh, who we lost recently, he was there as well. And I thought, what's he doing here? You know. Anyway, he was, in retrospect, organising the wedding. But I was mistaken for Debbie Rowe. I can't possibly imagine why. She was huge. She was huge. And she wasn't the most attractive woman.
No. Oh, blonde hair, I suppose.
Yeah, blonde. No, but big. And anyway, when Paul and I had to go out of the hotel, and all of a sudden the press just went nuts. And they're going, Debbie, Debbie. And I'm going, guys, it's Di. I've been working with you all day. Like, control yourselves. But there I was, all over CNN.
Wow.
And newspapers. And I tried to find all the newspapers. I couldn't find them. But gosh, that was funny. And I was mistaken for his wife. But they kept saying that I was his wife. There were photographs of me on the balcony. And my mother had just had a heart transplant or something. And she yelled out to my father, oh, Pete, my father's name, Di's just got married to Michael Jackson. And Dad's like, oh, she's had too much medicine or something. And people rang Molly Meldrum, and Molly said, oh, thank God we've been trying to marry her off for years, which is so funny. But I've got to say, Michael Jackson is the master of PR. Absolutely the master. Always forward thinking, always thinking about what's next, putting himself in the forefront. And the next day, and we had a wonderful party that night. And I think your flatmate, Anne Hebig, was there and came home with all the balloons. And you said, where are all the balloons from? And you said, and she said, on Michael Jackson's wedding. I mean, they were great days. They were great days.
Yeah.
And he was I just loved him. And he loved Thanksgiving. He never celebrated a birthday. Oh, sorry. He never celebrated a birthday. He never celebrated Christmas, but he celebrated Thanksgiving.
Okay.
And
I wonder why. Do you know?
Because it was the American Indian. They celebrate the American Indians. Right. But he was very strict. He was raised very, very strict.
Okay.
And religious.
Yeah. And so it was breaking away from all of that.
Yeah.
Okay.
So anyway, we had a lot of fun. Yeah. There were a lot of laughs on the road with Michael Jackson.
Yeah. David Bowie.
Oh, beautiful.
Yeah, what a talent. What a
beautiful talent. Genius. Charming.
Was he?
Oh,
yeah.
He could charm.
Yeah.
He charmed everybody in the room.
Yeah, well, I was lucky enough to meet him as well, but ever so briefly. I wasn't sort of, like on the road with him or whatever, but he was a very charming man.
And he dressed so superbly.
Yeah.
And he was just magnificent. Yeah. He was such a beautiful artist. Yeah. He was an artist.
He was a true artist, yes, on so many levels. So, here you are, you've done television, you've done radio, now you're out on the road with all these big acts and with film as well. Back here in Melbourne, you're working on the Steve Vizard show.
Yes.
That's when I really got to know you. But what is it about PR? What is it about like you're a producer on Vizard show and Don Lane show? What can you tell our audience? What is the magic of those roles? Even though they're bloody hard work, aren't they?
It's basically about looking after people's needs, and you are everything. You're the confidant. You're the keeping the going on the road, because there's a majority of people on the road are men. I was absolutely horrified at first about what men get up to. Like, I sort of had this vague notion of what men get up to, but they actually do get up to all that bad stuff. And I was forever hurling men out of strip joints and going, you shouldn't be in there, because they're famous, they shouldn't be in there. And but it's magic being a PR person, because you get to know the person very quickly, you get to know their poison, and also when you get a front cover or you get a double-page spread, there's nothing like it in the world. And I mean nothing. Yeah. It is the greatest feeling. Yeah. And you feel like you've pleased the promoter, you're selling tickets, and that's because you really are a glorified ticket seller, basically, a publicist. You've got to sell those tickets. Yeah. It's all about filling those seats. Yeah. And of course, they're all very clever now. Like Mick Jagger will count every seat. Michael Jackson wouldn't play to an arena unless it was completely full. Taylor Swift's the same. They're all very clever. Yeah. Harry Styles is the same. Perfect, good marketing people. Yeah. Good business people. Yeah.
And of course, they're not all like that though. There are some that are like you just think, how did you get into this position? But their music or whatever.
Yes. And their talent. Yeah. And they and that's respect. They respect their talent. Yeah. And they want people to be there. Yeah.
So here you are back in Melbourne working on Steve Vizard's show. And again, it was all the big names were on it when they came into Melbourne, and they would do Countdown, and then they would do, like Hey Hey It's Saturday, and then Steve Vizard show.
Yes,
and it was 5 nights a week as well, which is quite a big demand. What did you learn as time went on from, say, Don Lane show to that show?
The people need looking after. People need acknowledgement. And whether it's the brown M&Ms in the bowl, whether it's people need acknowledgement. And I always say, and I still say it, that and working with Prince Edward was sort of interesting too.
Oh, I can imagine that would be very particular.
Yes, very. It's all about acknowledgement. We humans need acknowledgement. So it's all about leaving whatever my issues were at home, and they're the rock star. And you treat everyone like a rock star. And when you do that, you get the absolute best out of everybody. And so, I just treat people like they're David Bowie now, and I get the best out of people. I'm very honest with people.
Yep.
A lot of people have huge expectations about PR because if you worked with someone like Michael Jackson, you've got to be able to get me in the paper.
Yep.
But you can't.
And because there's less space for the arts
absolutely.
these days.
And the arts is declining, so you've got to have a hook, and you've got to have where the hits go. What do they call them on social media? Where you've got to be able to get the numbers up.
Yeah.
And people will hit those stories.
Yeah.
Because social media is just a whole new other thing.
But it's always been like it though, where I find a lot of journalists are lazy people.
Oh, very.
And I know a lot of them personally.
Yes.
But they only take they pick like the very cream at the top, and they don't go to anyone interesting, which is midstream.
No, they don't.
And I find that really frustrating because on the whole, the general public just don't want to see the obvious thing all the time.
No, they don't. And that's another thing about acknowledging the general public, because the ordinary general public people are the people who go to the football, and they have such passion and they love their players, like Trent Cotchin and Dusty Martin, and, they love their players with such a passion, and Bontempelli and all those fabulous men, that just, and the public love them, and that has to be acknowledged. And so, it's the same, it's just acknowledging people. It all comes back to that.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter who they are. And so I find that journalists miss out on that stuff a lot.
And how frustrating is that for a publicist?
Well, it is nowadays. It's very frustrating, because once upon a time, what would be a story just isn't anymore. And also I learned, I want to tell a story about Rod Stewart, because he was a great marketer too. But one day, Paul Dainty, you have to do what the promoter says, because the promoter's your boss. And I was forever being told, you're not working for Barry Manilow, you're working for Magi. Paul Dainty said that one to me once, and I was like, because I love Barry Manilow, he was great. But Rod Stewart was staying at the Park Hyatt around near Parliament House, and Paul said, now, Di, I don't want any of the media out the front to take any photos of Rod and his girlfriend, beautiful girlfriend. Just leave them alone, tell the media to go away. Well, that's awful for a publicist. I wanted to be front cover of the Herald Sun the next day. Anyway, Rod Stewart was just sort of standing over to my left, and Paul went up in the lift, and Rod Stewart came over to me and he said, we're just going around the corner to the coffee shop, and we'll sit in the front window and send the newspapers around there. And I thought, great.
Good on him.
Because he knows that a photo in the Herald... Because I said to Paul, I want it to be on the front page of the Herald Sun. No pictures.
Why? Why do you think...
that was told us to a lot. No pictures, no,
But wasn't it all the whole thing about getting bums on seats?
Yeah, but if Paul didn't want it, and maybe Rod said, I'm not doing any publicity today, I'm just going to take my girlfriend, who I cannot remember her name, she's gorgeous, around the corner.
But he was smart enough to go, yes.
And Rod, anyway, when Rod knew the opportunity, and of course there was the most beautiful photo on the Herald Sun the next day, and the show sold out. Absolutely sold out. But Paul said, Di, how did this happen? I said, but isn't it fabulous?
So you didn't get into trouble? He thought it was just a good thing because...
It was a good thing.
Yeah, like the ticket sales went through the roof.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I didn't say, but Rod said I could do it, because that would have been the worst thing in the world.
But then all of a sudden, here you are, like down the track, and Prince Edward,
Yes.
and then the Melbourne Recital Centre,
Yes.
One of the most prestigious
Yes, that was
venues
amazing.
here in Melbourne. Like we have the Arts Centre, we have the NGV, which is visual arts, but the purpose-built like
venue.
Recital Centre is, and like that Elizabeth Murdoch Hall is just I can remember I was there, and I think you were organising it, and I was there with the radio. Is that we were right up the back with the architects, and somebody was on the stage and they dropped a 20-cent piece and we could hear it up the back.
Magnificent.
And like a beautiful venue. You were involved with that for 13 years.
I was involved with that for 13 years. Now, when that was being built, I drove past there in a taxi and I said to myself, I'm going to do PR for that building one day. And I got a phone call to say, would I come and work for them for a week, because their publicist had left. And I went in for a meeting at the Malt House, of all places. I always remember it.
Why?
They asked me if I'd come for a meeting at the Malt House. And
but why there and not at
I don't know.
Oh, okay.
I don't know.
Oh, maybe they didn't want
Strange
to.
things happen. Anyway, we had a meeting and they showed me who was performing the next night, and they said, can you get media in for this performer, violinist? I said, sure. Can you get an interview for him tomorrow? Yeah, sure. And I did. Anyway.
Weren't you worried that you wouldn't get it?
No.
Oh.
No.
Okay.
No. Because I immediately knew what I would ask.
Right, okay.
And I went to the ABC, of course.
Yeah.
But, and I think, PR is instinctive, a lot of it.
Yep.
And, I'm sure girls that I know, like Erin Jamieson, we feel a picture opportunity. Everything's a picture opportunity. And everything's a huge story. Like, I don't want to date this interview, and I'm not sure what will happen with this poor woman and the mushrooms. But that's a story. That is a huge story.
Oh, no, there's a podcast about a podcast all about it.
Oh, fantastic. Oh, my God, I have to listen.
No, there isn't yet, but I'm sure there will be.
There is. Yeah, there is. That's a big story.
Oh, okay.
No, there will be a podcast.
But it's also going to be a mini-series.
Absolutely.
Give it 12 months for it to unfold, and it will be...
I am just waiting to see what happens with that. And she's going to get a manager, and she's going to be offered millions of dollars, and she'll be on Dancing with the Stars. But I'm just intrigued.
You're taking it to another level. She might end up in jail, though.
Oh, very much so. I'm sure she will. I don't know. Allegedly.
Yeah, allegedly.
I don't know.
Yeah, we don't know.
I don't know. But everything's a story. Everyone has a story, really.
So, Di, are you finding that you want to slow down?
Yes, a little bit. Yeah. Yes, a little bit. I'd still work a lot.
Why?
Oh.
It's your interest, it's your hobby?
It's my hobby, really. Yeah. And people will always fascinate me. I will always follow pop culture. I love pop culture. I love what's going on in the world. I follow politics closely. I think I'll be on the phone when I'm on my last breath, I think. I'll be going, is that press release ready yet?
Make sure they bury your phone with you.
Yes.
Yes, there you go.
Absolutely.
That's the key.
Yeah, no, I just think that's why we're here, to work.
And you live in, I won't say where you live, but you live in sort of like the hub, don't you, of where a lot of the entertainment, lot of the media are involved in as well. So, you walk out your front door and it's there.
Well, I live on map 58, so that sort of gives an idea where I live. And it's all happening there, and I never leave there at the weekend. I just stay there. People get shot. It's so exciting. And you look out your window and you go, oh, my God, someone just got shot, and I heard that. The bullets and everything. It was just horrendous. But it's life, and it's going on around you, and you duck and weave and hope for the best, But I love that.
Yeah.
It's like living in New York.
Yeah. So... is there one moment out of all the people we've spoken about today and in your memory, is there one moment that you'll treasure the most?
Keith Richard, on my birthday, opening a bottle of red wine at the MCG.
Yeah?
Before the show.
Backstage?
No, we were sort of looking out over the green at the
okay,
MCG.
so, right.
Over the... He goes, here you are, darling.
So
Happy
in one
birthday.
of the private boxes or something like that, I suppose.
No, we were just in the seats.
Oh!
Down there.
Oh, before the
before
audience.
the show. And he opened up this very nice bottle of red wine. And I think that sort of took my breath away. He was very special. I liked him. And also Mick Jagger saying to me after the press conference at the MCG, did you get everything you wanted? Thanks.
That's
Mick.
Brilliant.
Yeah, those sorts of things.
Yeah, well, congratulations on
you.
your extraordinary, brilliant career.
Thank you.
And I can't wait to see what might happen next, because you don't even know.
No, I don't even know. I might write a book.
Oh, everyone says that, though.
Yeah, everyone says to me to write a book, but I really want to keep working for a little bit longer. But I have got some great stories, as you would know. I've got some really great stories.
Yeah, well, some that we probably can't tell.
That we can't talk about.
No, that's why we're not talking about them
No.
now. Di Rolle, thank you so much for
Thank
chatting
you.
with us today.
Thank you, David.
My pleasure.
Thank you.
You've been watching The Art Hunter. I'm David Hunt. She is Di Rolle. She's a legend. And we'll be back again next week. We're almost to our 100th show. Yay! Bye.